Right, this is Marcos Patchett speaking for the Academy of Astrology, and this little video today is called Uranus in Taurus, Pluto and Saturn in Capricorn, this changing Earth. And I called it that because we have two major planets of change, Uranus and Pluto, shortly going to be in Earth signs. I say going to be, we're filming this in August 2017, and Pluto, beg pardon, Uranus will be going into Taurus in, I think, April 2018. So from April 2018 we'll have two of the outer planets in Earth signs. Just a quick and brief introduction to both of those symbols. Now, a previous video by Mandy Lockley for the Academy of Astrology, she's discussed Uranus in Taurus in some detail, and I think a previous video, I think we may have mentioned Pluto in Capricorn as well. But I just want to briefly review the symbolism of those two planets. So Uranus generally is a planet that symbolises revolution, change, disruption, inspiration, mutation and technology. It's a very drastic, sudden planet, essentially, and it represents the new, the shock of the new would be a good summary for Uranus. And Pluto, as befits a planet named after the god of the underworld, although I think he was originally named after the Disney dog, but never mind. Pluto represents catharsis, elimination, survival, and sort of domination in a sense, but it's Pluto can represent anything that survival issues often come up with Pluto, whether often the experiences that we have individually and collectively when Pluto is transiting, is passing over an important point in a national chart or an individual chart or whatever, are crises as a result of a fear of the survival of something. So people react in crazy ways when their survival is threatened. So what does it mean, the relationship, the changing relationship between those two planets? Well, for the past few years, since I think 2009, 2010, Uranus in Aries has been making a series of squares, hard aspects to Pluto. Those squares were sort of playing out between 2010 and 2016, a little bit 2017. And Uranus in Aries, the planet of revolution, in a very fast, fiery sign like Aries, in a square which is an aspect of conflict with that Pluto in Capricorn, often symbolises, has symbolised, as we've seen over the past few years, a time of global disruption. And that disruption has taken particular form, because there's always some form of disruption going on somewhere in the world. The Uranus in Aries, as I say, is very revolutionary, incredibly revolutionary, because you've got this planet of revolution, the shock of the new planet, in the sign of the new. Aries is a Mars-ruled, fiery, aggressive, new, fast-moving sign, and it's in conflict with Pluto, the power planet, the paranoid power planet in Capricorn, an earth sign which is also fairly fast moving but quite repressive, very conservative, very traditional, because it's an earth sign, so it's rooted in the past. It's ruled by Saturn, which is extremely traditional, very fearful, doesn't like to let go of control, but it's movable, so it's ambitious. So you have this conflict between vested hidden power and new revolutionary kind of ideas. And that's been playing out in all sorts of ways. So we've seen that in the West in stuff like the Occupy movement, there's been stuff like the Arab Spring, there's been all sorts of stuff going on a global level, which has represented that clash. What's interesting from a traditional astrological perspective is that Pluto in Capricorn has the upper hand in that square, because it is in the 10th sign from Uranus. In astrological terms, that means it is above it, it is in a superior position, literally. So in this clash between the new young revolutionaries, or new ideas, revolutionary new ideas, like new technologies and stuff, the vested sort of secret service kind of powers that be operating subterraneously will win, or have won, or are winning, because that square is still playing out a little bit. Now, when Uranus moves into Taurus in April 2018, the narrative shifts from new revolutionary thing to, as Mandy talked about in her video, revolutions in technology to do perhaps with the earth, to do with stuff to do with organic farming. There could be all sorts of ramifications for that, but the point is they'll shift from a square relationship to a trine relationship. Now the two planets will not fully complete a trine while Uranus is in Taurus. So there is potential there for a sort of a gentle revolution that will affect the way that those powers that be manage things, but it's never fully realised because Uranus moves out of Taurus before a trine is completed. But what will happen while Uranus is in Taurus and Pluto is in Capricorn is that Saturn is going to be moving into Capricorn, as Sue Merlin-Fairbrother talked about in her video about Saturn in Capricorn. And Saturn's going to be in Capricorn from January 2018, actually from right at the end of December 2017 till March 2020. And while Saturn, the planet of conservatism, is in this very conservative Capricornian sign, it'll be coming to conjunct Pluto, the power broker planet, and later the south node, which is an eclipse point, will also be coming into Capricorn. So this is a bunch of planets I've got going on here, but we've got Uranus in Taurus, which is shaking up the way things are done and shaking up the technology, the way we use technology in our bodies, the way we use technology to affect the earth. We have the power brokers getting more and more conservative and paranoid, because as Saturn comes to join Pluto, we'll have the powers that be trying to clamp down on any incipient change and getting more and more paranoid. And then the south node, this eclipse point, comes into Capricorn, and that will weaken the powers that be and their sort of agenda for the next sort of 2.5 years. So as a non-mundane astrologer, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. That means I don't normally do predictions on a global scale, but just reading the astrology for what it is, it looks like for the next 2 or 3 years, we'll have an increase in sort of paranoid, reactionary, possibly right-wing, but certainly conservative power that will get somewhat weakened, possibly by trying to over-control people. So that's kind of interesting. As a final note, just looking at Uranus going into Taurus, the last time it was in Taurus was in 1935 to 1941, which is a little bit scary because that was of course when the Second World War kicked off. I'm not going to say that's going to happen again because there was a whole bunch of different astrological factors going on there. But what is interesting from my point of view as a citizen of the UK is that the UK chart, Mars, that's the UK, United Kingdom's national chart, which I use the 1801 chart, that's the 1st of January 1801, midnight for Westminster in London. It has Mars in Taurus in the 8th house, ruling the 7th and 3rd houses. And what this means, the 7th house is the house of foreigners, other people. The 3rd house is the media and communications, and the 8th is the house of death, emergencies, and other people's money. So when you have Uranus going over that Mars, it can shake things up with the media, with foreign relations, and it can do so in a way that is shocking and can be somewhat violent. It can also be to do with changes with the way we deal with emergencies, but it's stuff that wakes people up very suddenly. And the last time Uranus was going through Taurus and went over that Mars, I pinned the date down to June 1937, and the two significant events happened in that June. The first was that it was the first major speech that Neville Chamberlain, then Prime Minister in the UK, made about the deteriorating relations in Europe and the possibility of war in Europe. And he spoke about how necessary it was to try and avoid war and how he thought it was avoidable, which of course it turned out that it wasn't, but he made that first speech about that. And the second thing was the introduction of an emergency medical services number, 999, which is the first of its kind in the world, so people could call up if they had a medical emergency and get immediate service. So that's the introduction of Uranus, the technology, into the sort of the emergency situation of Mars in the 8th house. So As usual with astrology, we'll see a mixture of good and bad with any of these planetary movements. Anyway, that was my very brief and rambly summary of Uranus in Taurus, Pluto in Capricorn, with the upcoming Saturn in Capricorn as well. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe, share the video, and please have a look at our website. And also, we have a new foundation course coming up in September this year, so please do consider having a look at that. Alright, thank you very much.